Parker Schnabel, the face of Gold Rush. The youngest genius to ever draw. No longer millions from frozen earth. Operating an excavator he is. Behind sealed doors following a devastating decision in one of the most astonishing environmental lawsuits in mining history. Schnabel's gold empire has been stopped. Chile and the life sentence given out. No appeals remaining, no parole, no prison. This is the same Parker who applied his college fund to launch a mining company. They extracted more than $13 million in gold value. By 24, who transformed mud into television gold and brought in $24 million over season 14 alone, yet now he has $16 million. From this year sits frozen his dominion. Creek's claims are being looked into and fans are left with one pressing issue. How did the most disciplined, hardest working miner in TV history went from legend to locked up? Parker Schnabel is no stranger to pressure he has been in the gold game since his teenage years. By 24, he had already taken more than $13 million value of gold from the earth. His crew rad in $24 in season 14 alone. Million, and now in season 15 having the with gold pricing climbing higher than ever. He ought to be sitting well, but he's about to become bankrupt. A collapse, and now something far more darker, since somewhere between pursuing ounces and pursuing legacy, Parker creates one choice, one that alters everything. Then the narrative changes there. Directly into a court going into. Parker had one figure this season on his mind: 10,000 ounces. That was the goal. At present gold prices, that's more than $26 million. It's enormous. However, to reach there he required more than diligence. He required no delays, serious pay, serious volume. And that is when he acted to caused eyebrows to rise and eventually concerns. He spent $2.5 million to acquire two huge allegations: Gold Run and Sulphur Creek. These were not only random mud patches. They were historic, some of the wealthiest sites all throughout the Klondike areas that yielded $1.5 billion in gold throughout the past century, yet they were also hazardous, bare ground, unstable topography, liabilities unknown. Parker did not. He didn't think twice. He wanted a chance at greatness. And he was ready to put all on the table to support the fresh assertions. Parker had to shift his largest wash transfer bog plant from Ken and Stewart's claim. It was a 25-mile trek to Sulphur Creek. Longest he had ever tried. He gave his crew only 10 hours to pull it off. That's not only tight, it's crazy, but they just about managed it mechanically. Tyson Lee hurried to repair damaged components. Drove the logistics. Bob was at last up and running for a while. Stuff looked fantastic, really well in only 4 days. Bob came in. Value $290.050. $766,000 extra. $276.010 from Roxon at elbow cut. Parker's team went over 6,000 ounce mark, 16 million on the records, and just like that the gamble seemed clever. Although behind the scenes the clock was rising, the deeper they excavated at Dominion Creek and Bridge Cut, the more problems surfaced. Large red. Parker's workhorse wash plant went down after 12 seasons and more. The stress bars, $53 million in gold, snapped, closing the entire operation down. That factory had brought in 34,300 ounces throughout the years, and today it was gone with only Bob and Roxon operating. Parker's margin for mistake vanished. He wanted everything to be perfect, but anything didn't. What you didn't observe on TV was the legal issue already developing. In the haste to increase his assertions and squeeze every last drop before winter, Parker struck quick purchases. Adjacent claims under a private contract bypassing environmental review processes and the time his team broke ground at Sulphur Creek inquiries. Arrived in inquiries regarding permits regarding the disruption of a safeguarded watercourse. Regarding ancient gasoline tanks buried on the property, issues lacking tidy responses you perhaps overlooked. The initial indications a postponed inspection, a peaceful visit from government authorities. However, the warning signs were present, and as Parker ran operations more aggressively, 247s transporting thousands of yards of gravel running across protected regions, those red flags became subpoenas. Next came the actual bombshell federal charges were complaint claiming Parker of deliberate environmental infractions, not minor ones. Huge ones: unlawful dredging, disturbance of streams nationally protected, carelessness in garbage disposal, all connected to the $2.5 million land sale, and prosecutors discovered more as they probed further, lacking paperwork, authorization overrides, and, worst of all, fabricated inspection reports endorsed by supposedly said to be under Parker's guidance. The show allegedly abruptly became no longer about ounces, it was about evidence. Prosecutors contended Parker deliberately pushed his business past legal restrictions to reach his 10,000 ounce goal. He neglected to cut corners on warnings and endanger the environment and court the public safety at risk. In the figures were damning: 68 recorded violations, over $3.1 million in illegal site changes, polluted soil surrounding equipment zones, plus more than 8,000 gallons of hydraulic fluid unaccounted for. In Parker's defense, team attempted to activate the emergency brake. They contended it was all a mistake, that subcontractors have let down, that missing permits were simply paperwork delays without deliberate intention to violate the law. Yet, when the emails were retrieved, court-ordered emails became chaotic. One thread from earlier in the season revealed Parker striving for continuous manufacturing and instructing his staff to disregard agency interference. That message did not merely raise eyebrows, it kept coming up repeatedly. And every time it happened, the courtroom became calmer. Than the case moved, a former crew member who had left halfway through the season stepped forward with allegations that Parker was aware precisely what he was doing, that he had been cautioned several times about the missing forms and possible violations. He went ahead regardless. Unexpectedly, this was no longer a discussion about who was in charge, it was a full-blown focus on a pressured leader trying anything to reach that 10,000 ounce target. The results were terrible. The accusations piled up like pay dirt: environmental wrongdoing, site harm, faked inspection reports, irresponsible excavation on federal land. It wasn't one error, it was a pattern, the sort of pattern prosecutors termed intentional contempt of rules, and when they included obstacle on the list, matters became from grave to professional. The court's end didn't hold it back. Ruled that Parker's behavior satisfied the most environmental damage setting off sentence criteria that amazed everyone present. But here's the twist: while the headlines shouted controversy, the sentence didn't convey the entire narrative. No one mentioned prison officially, there was no dramatic mug shot, no televised walk of shame. Parker instead disappeared from the quietly, secretly, murmurs flew spotlight. Some claimed he was negotiating compensation. Some said he was in protection custody, but no one had solutions, and that quiet spoke louder than anything at this Parker Schnabel was Discovery Channel's Golden Boy, the youngster who began digging when he was a teen who had drawn in about $13 million worth of gold by the time he was 24, who oversaw 8 spin-offs including Gold Rush, Parker's Trail, who had brought in $24 million in season 14 alone, and now nothing, not even. The odd thing, Parker wasn't the showy kind. He never lived like a famous. He didn't have houses or designer vehicles. In fact, during the peak of at the pinnacle of his success, he acknowledged dozing on a friend's LA couch. He didn't blow his money on status symbols, rather, he spent it on travels with his father, memories, hunting weekends with his world crew. It was series tickets and Vegas getaways. It was never about the money, it was about loyalty and experience. That attitude came from his origins. His great-grandpa chiseled a life from the Alaskan wilderness. His granny came along in 1937. His father still rises every morning at 4:30 to labor. Parker grew raised among those who didn't stop, who toiled despite suffering, who keep going regardless of the. That's what formed him under all circumstances. And that is what caused his decline to be so unpleasant to see. He once spent a whole summer working next to his grandfather, listening to supper every night. Tales spanning many generations. Remembrance, the one he claims he wishes he recorded, was more vital to him than each gold bar. Parker always grasped that money fades, what counted was legacy, and now that legacy is endangered. Season 15 was meant to be his comeback, his breakout year, the one in which he struck 10,000 ounces and destroyed the. He beat 10,000 ounces and blew the contest away. Rather, it's the season cursed equipment is being called by many. Breakdowns allow back-to-back nightmares. Legal threats, it was all piled upon him, and Parker attempted to remain concentrated, to labor more quickly, intelligently. The strain caught up and wasn't sufficient. Something broke, no one knows what it was. Follows the $16 million he made. Legal reviews are consuming this season. The crew's claims are on hold. Scattered, some are remaining silent, others are attempting to keep things together, but without Parker at the center, everything seems different. Dominion Creek was the Parker's largest wager ever placed. He did not just lease the land, as he previously bought it outright, which meant no monthly charges, no royalty distributions, but it also meant all the danger was on him. That check he signed one up front for $15 million. Payment, no refunds, and that was only to begin. Since Dominion's gold, it wasn't resting on the surface, it was buried over 40 feet deep. Getting to it would add millions more in equipment. By the statistics, it fuels work and time. Seemed like a brilliant move. Domination holds around 80,000 ounces of gold at present market values, about $2,000 per ounce, or $160 million, lying in the dirt. Parker didn't only view it as a mine. He viewed it as a future should he be able to draw 10,000 ounces annually spread throughout 6 seasons. He would arrive. That was the aim. Was the template, yet there was a catch. He had only 6 years remaining on the water. Licenses and permits, thereafter no promises should authorities not extend their licenses. The license all left in the everything left in the earth would be a complete loss. Thus Parker did what Parker always does. He went. Alan, his crew began moving soil by the millions, 25 million bank cards throughout the duration of the assertion that disintegrates to more than 4 million yards a season, and when you really shift it, that material extends to make it more akin to 30 million yards. That sort of job is not only tiring but also crushing. Machinery damages crew wear. Schedules slide. The strain doesn't fall on one person, it hits everyone. It strikes everyone, not just one individual. Tyson Lee, you experienced it all over. Mitch Blaschke, the whole team, they were under the gun every week since this. There was no safety net since this wasn't a lease. Every delay consumed every ounce of money. They didn't recover was $1 Parker wouldn't return, and for Parker failing wasn't a choice, not after that examination. Not with that schedule, not when the whole operation depended on him remaining faster than the speed 10,000 ounces a year. No exceptions. Now let's go back a bit. Parker didn't arrive here by playing safe. At the time he entered the highlights in 2010 on Gold Rush Alaska, he showed he was made from a different fabric than other mining bought toys and vehicles. Parker concentrated on ground plan and crew. By 24 he possessed. By season he had drawn $13 million in gold. 14 his haul hit $24 million, and the performance followed him all the way to Klondike, Oregon, Colorado, even Guyana. He was a workhorse, planner, and most of all a warrior. But in season 15, something shifting. Dominion was a game share, but so was the pressure. Parker confessed that the actual dread was not the price, but rather losing his crew, shrinking, slicing those who had been with him from the beginning. He would prefer to lose money than lose them, and that's precisely why he chose to expand rather than shrink or turn. He acquired more land, not bailed, he grew. He even guaranteed a royalty on operations arrangement with Metallic Minerals for sole rights to mine a 12 kilometers length of Australia Creek. That contract by itself comes with a minimum yearly of $1 million commitment plus royalties, fees on every ounce drawn. So not only did he have Dominion to run, he now had an whole secondary site beneath Little Flake Mining's canopy. That is how quickly the scale expanded, and that's what drove the crew dynamism so vital. Parker remarked himself he didn't want anybody nearby him who under pressure couldn't keep up. They were out. No excuses, no second chances, and with $200 million long-term potential at stake, the standard was higher than ever. The standard was greater than ever. Yet things didn't remain smooth, since the larger the operation became, the less room there had for error. Every shattered wash plant, every weather delay, each ounce short of quota, it all piled up, and that's when the strain began seeping into relationships. Parker did not observe much of Rick Ness that season. In reality, the two hardly ever crossed paths. Parker saw Rick in person just twice. Over the summer they had one significant sit-down on camera regarding a difficult predicament Rick was coping with, but apart from that they ran in distinct lanes. The same applies to Tony Beats years ago. Parker and Tony battled toe-to-toe over all allows ground royalties save. This time they maintained their distance, a few between scenes, pleasant mugs of coffee. Nothing more, since Parker owed Tony nothing more. Tony whatever more he owned his. He held his permits on ground he was not slashing royal checks, and that signified less connectivity but also less fights. And that separation has a price. When Dominion's stress began growing, there wasn't much external. Parker was locked in, head down, supporting, struggling to stay up. At the same moment he was still moving forward with his public commitments. He finished a significant agreement with Metallic, kept it a 400-hole project drill regimen. He even got the Robert E. Leckie Award in 2022 given by the Yukon government for environmental stewardship, only 2 years before his activities started under legal fire. That's how quickly things can change in the mining world. One season you're winning prizes, the next Parker being looked into off the clock. Remained as always low-key. Nomadic and grounded, he didn't reside in houses or party in private planes. He remained on sofas 1 week in LA, another week in Mexico, occasionally the Bahamas. He spends in kiteboards, snowmobiles. Winters riding snowbikes if they don't. When he doesn't break down, he isn't showy, he's simply wired to push, and maybe that's perhaps part of the issue, since while others were speculating about how a 20-some might bring in $13 million by age, Parker, 24, was out there putting it back in, risking it twice on new terrain. And not in a high-rise boardroom, but 40 feet below Dominion Creek, where one incorrect call might sink an whole season. By 2024, projections put Parker at over $8 million. Others pushed it nearer to $10 million. Either way, it wasn't what most people anticipated. For a man who has been the main character of a highly regarded Discovery Channel series for more than 10 years, he does not wear watches more expensive than a car. He does not gather uncommon automobiles. He does not. Most sources say he doesn't even own a house except the simple one in Honus, Alaska, lying on private acreage on a calm lake. 2,000 wood metal roof, square feet, erected in 2015. Frame not precisely Hollywood. What distinguishes? At one time, rumors made it more surprising. Swirled that he purchased a $950,000 mansion. Parker flat out rejected. It claimed he was homeless, enjoyed sleeping on friends' couches. For most individuals, however, that would not be realistic, but with Parker it makes sense. This is the same man who spent his whole back when other teenagers were selecting dorm rooms. He used his whole college cash to gamble on himself. Most teens were selecting dorm rooms. He was deciding between rock formations and purchasing permits. That $17 million wager on Dominion Creek, it wasn't his first. It was simply the most public, loudest, and the most dangerous, because ground was not simple gold. It was deep, 40 feet under an ice dirt. He would have to shift 30 million bankyards of soil over 6 years to create it. Operate more than 5 million yards per year, every year, non-stop, not just on the machines, but on the individuals operating them. Dominion was not a little mine, it was a gold-hungry beast, and Parker was the only one ready to control it. Even if he didn't, gold prices hit record highs. He used whatever he could find to hire more people. A larger crew included more tools. He signed royalties agreements with metallic minerals to mine Australia Creek, promising a $1 advanced royalty. Annual work obligation of $1 million. He was not only digging gold, he was constructing a gold empire. The labor continued beyond Yukon. He traveled worldwide: Guyana, Papua New Guinea, Alaska, Australia, Brazil, from glaciers to the jungle, from Klondike to the rainforests as other crews were. Parker was packing it up for winter. Halfway around the globe, firing. Parker's path, unearthing gold where few would dare, operating logistics in languages he didn't speak, fearing insects, mudslides, mountain illness, anything standing between him and another payout. He once at 16,000 feet in the Andes, he became unwell. Altitude sickness left him flat, but he persisted, and throughout all of it the camera kept rolling. Gold Rush, Parker's trail, streaming rights, merchandise agreements, sponsorships, which the $2,500 per episode pay quickly accumulated. Several studies say he earns more than $4 million yearly when you consider licenses and mining earnings, TV payouts. His crew, they make between $10,000 to $25,000 each episode. Personally, it's a machine, a profitable one, but here the turn, even with all the millions with all the programs with the whole. Parker was never with all the shows with the whole mining world watching. Not truly chasing the money, he was pursuing legacy, attempting to meet his grandfather's expectations, attempting to defend his workers, attempting to show that a peaceful Alaskan town might face the most terrible in the world industry and win. Hence, this time hits harder than everyone anticipated, since this isn't some famous person caught up in. This is Parker Schnabel, the child, not celebrity, caught up in scandal. The person who never grew up in dirt. Gave up the man who created an empire with a backhoe and a crew of dying hearts to witness it. Things put on hold, even momentarily, rattles fans, investors, miners, people, everyone. His $16 million haul from this year. Frozen, his Dominion claims under legal review, his royalty sites silent, his future hazy, and although Discovery keeps broadcasting season 15 episodes, the elephant in the room is known to all. Though no one is saying it, everyone senses it. The question then is if Parker returns stronger than before, or does this chapter commemorate the conclusion of a magnificent run?